Hello guys, I'm quickly gonna run through this online lecture because it's for Wednesday, and tonight, because your tutor is a huge procrastinator, it's Tuesday night, and this video is supposed to go up on Wednesday. So I'm gonna quickly run through the origins of the Cold War. So let's go. The Cold War dominated international relations from the late 1940s to the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. The conflict centered around the intense rivalry between the Communist Empire of the Soviet Union and the leading Western democracy, the United States. Superpower competition usually was through diplomacy rather than armed conflict, but in several instances, the Cold War took the world dangerously close to a nuclear war. So please stop the video and answer your warm-up questions. The 3 questions on your warm-up on Google Classroom. Submit it to me and check back in here for the next part. Hey, welcome back. Let's go. Among historians, there is an intense debate over how and why the Cold War began. Many analysts see Truman's policies as a reasonable response to Soviet efforts to increase their influence in the world. However, some critics argue that Truman misunderstood and overreacted to Russia's historic need to secure its borders. Other critics have attacked his administration as being weak or soft on communism. So the Soviet Union was doing their type of imperialistic style. And they are filled with communist ideals. And we are, on the other hand, democratic in nature. That's the whole United States funding principle. We are a democratic nation. So, democratic and communism is way opposite from each other. So there was a fight on ideals, and many Americans had many different feelings on how Truman handled these controversies. From being soft or weak on imperialist on communism to being too hard on communism. U.S. Soviet relations to 1945. The wartime alliance between the United States and the Soviet Union against the Axis power was actually a temporary halt in their poor relations of the past. Since the revolution that established a communist government in Russia in 1917, Americans had viewed the Soviets as a threat to all capitalistic countries. In the United States, it led to the Red Scare of 1919. The United States refused to recognize the Soviet Union until 1933. Even then, after a brief honeymoon period of less than a year, Roosevelt's advisors concluded that Joseph Stalin and the communists could not be trusted. Confirming their view was the notorious Non-Aggression Pact of 1939, in which Stalin and Hitler agreed to divide up Eastern Europe. So we were actually having a decent relation with the Soviet Union between 1933. We were on talking terms, but soon after we were not on talking terms. Especially when the Non-Aggression Pact of 1939 came into play, this started the downward spiral until 1945, when we split alliance with the Soviet Union, and now we are fighting them in the Cold War. In 1941, Hitler's surprise invasion of the Soviet Union and Japan's surprise attack on Pearl Harbor led to a U.S.-Soviet alliance of convenience, but not of mutual trust. Stalin bitterly complained that the British and Americans waited until 1944 to open a second front in France. Because of this wait, Soviets bore the brunt of fighting the Nazis. By some estimates, half of all deaths in World War II were Soviets. The post-war conflicts over Central and Eastern Europe were already evident in the negotiations between Britain, the Soviet Union, and the US at Yalta and Potsdam in 1945. Roosevelt hoped that personal diplomacy might keep Stalin in check, but when Truman came to power, he quickly became suspicious of the Soviets. So, this was just talking about some of the compromises and alliances that the United States made during World War II. We are going to finish the origins of the Cold War on Friday. Tomorrow, all you are doing for me is a short response based on the post-war culture and politics that we discussed earlier this week.